Call this meeting of the school board to order. It is 6:30. First item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda as submitted. This is for possible action.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Dawn, second by Joe. Any discussion from the trustees? Seeing none, any public comment about the agenda?
See no public comment online.
All right, I'm going to call the question order. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. Second item on the agenda is the flag salute. Trustee Cassiopa, will you lead us in the pledge? Next item on the agenda is public comment. Comments will be accepted through telephonic participation or through virtual participation via email at publiccomment@carson.k12.nv.us. Comments may be made by members of the public on any matter within the authority of this board. Please note that public comment will be taken on items marked for possible action. Before action is taken on such items, a member of the public are encouraged to comment on such items at the time they are being considered. Although members of the board may respond to questions and discuss issues raised during public comment, no action may be taken on such a matter until the matter is placed on an agenda for action at a meeting of the board. In making public comment, speakers are asked to identify themselves for the record. Speakers are asked to further ask to refrain from speaking over each other if participating by telephone. Speakers are asked to limit their comments to no more than 3 minutes, whether in writing or oral, and not to simply repeat comments made by others. This is for discussion only. Do we have any public comment on the telephone?
We have one individual. Sarah, you are unmuted. Please provide your public comment.
Good evening, Sarah.
Oh, hi, I'm sorry. I was getting ahead of myself, I think. I was looking to tell you guys that the chat was disabled, but I didn't realize that we were going to be emailing. So now that I know that, I'm good.
You can use the raise hand feature as well to provide public comment online.
Okay, thank you.
All right, do we have any public comment on emails? This is before.
No emails at this time.
All right. Item number 4, presentation and discussion on possible action to open CCSD schools to 3 through 5th grade students at elementary level and 6th grade students at the middle school level to attend in person 4 days per week, Tuesday through Friday, effective January 19th, 2021. This is for possible action, and we will welcome Mr. Stokes, Mrs. Clario, Mrs. Squires, and Mrs. Ward DeJoseph. And I'll just ask, please make sure the microphone is close to you, and if I interrupt, that's just to make sure we could capture what's being said for the record.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. It's good to be with you this evening. Thank you for allowing us to present some information to the trustees this evening and certainly to the community. This is an important meeting. And I would like to maybe begin my comments just because I've heard this question several times throughout this past week. When we're talking about trying to put more students in the schools, it really does not have an impact on our funding mechanism. We have already enrolled the number of students that are going to be attending the school district, and we are in a place where we're receiving the revenues that are due to us as a result. So putting more students in our schools on a daily basis really does not change our revenue stream. And we can spend a little time on that if you want to. I know Mr. Fueling is here, but our enrollment is different than our average daily attendance. I mean, they're both important, but really the function behind us trying to get more students in our schools is from an academic and social and emotional perspective, where we can provide greater opportunities for our students and really not to try to generate more revenue for the school district. So I hope that that's helpful for anybody who might be watching. As you and our community knows, we have been operating our school district within several different instructional models. The first model that I'd like to just briefly describe is a fully remote model. And that's where our students use technology, and they either use those computers and technology materials and supplies from a remote location, be it their home, be it the Boys and Girls Club or a daycare of some sort. The student actually does not interact face-to-face with the teacher or with their classmates other than by virtual means. There's a benefit to this in that those students have really are only around other individuals that might be at home or at a daycare or at the Boys and Girls Club. So a family who really is worried about any illnesses that a student might contract by being full-time at school, this is less of a worry if they're in that remote category. We also have a hybrid model, which the majority of our students are taking advantage of, and that's where currently students are on campus 2 days a week, and they're at home or in a remote location for 3 days a week. And this applies really to our students in grades 3 through 12. So our purpose tonight is to generate some discussion, hear information from our community members, and also to hear from my colleagues, the principals at the elementary schools, as to what we are proposing to try and improve the academic climate for the majority of our students. Right now, with our students only being on campus and face-to-face 2 days out of the week, we have seen a huge increase in absenteeism, in engagement, and also in failures. And we know that our students do the best when they're in person, face-to-face, with a qualified teacher, able to meet on a regular basis, have new material reinforced daily, and to learn new material from a caring individual who acts as their teacher and their mentor. So we are asking tonight for you to consider and to discuss that we bring back to our schools all students in pre-K through 6th grade. This raises a few operational questions, and we hope to be able to identify and tell you how we will be managing those things. But remember that we've been in school now for a full semester, and that much of what we're doing is working very well. Our students are very well trained at the site in matters of face mask usage, social distancing, personal cleanliness. I don't think the hands of our students have ever been cleaner, and that's a good thing. We have dots on the hallways where students know to walk and how to space themselves. They have dots in the cafeteria and in classrooms knowing where they can sit, and all of these things are aimed at trying to keep our students safe. In fact, if you've seen any of our students walk through the halls, they practice what the teachers call zombie arms, and it's just a clever way to maintain space between the individual students. We believe our students are safe at school. Now, that doesn't mean that they will never get sick. In fact, if you think of life before COVID, our students became ill, our teachers became ill, our principals became ill. It's just kind of a matter of doing business. However, we're getting much better at all of that because of the social distancing, because of washing our hands, because of mask wearing. But just because a student or an adult gets sick at school, it doesn't mean that they necessarily have COVID. And some of those things have been conflicted a little bit as we handle or field questions from the community who may tend to think that every student that gets ill, or if a student or a teacher is out ill, that they automatically have COVID, and that's not necessarily the case. In fact, just in my office this week, there have been 3 adults who stayed home like we asked them to, who showed some sort of sign that could have been a COVID-related illness, but all 3 tested negative. So just so people know, because I know there's some questions out there regarding whether or not we're telling the full truth to staff and to parents regarding whether or not students are ill. And it's just really difficult to tell who actually has been to the doctor to get a COVID test, let alone to be able to follow up on some of those items. So we're doing the best we can, but it's not a perfect science. We also know that over time things have changed, and we expect that they will continue to change. We started out in this fashion in July because of what we knew about the virus at that time. As you recall, we brought back the pre-K through 2nd grade at the end of the 1st quarter. That has worked out very well. Our students are catching up. Our teachers are knowing how to handle those added numbers of students, even under the current governmental restrictions. The students are flourishing, and it's worked out well. The next phase that we're proposing is that we now bring back students in grades 3, 4, 5, and 6 under similar conditions. And we believe, again, that we can make schoolwork under the current restrictions and conditions. I would like to turn a little time now over to some of my colleagues, and we have a very short presentation surrounding the topics of academic, social and emotional, and operational processes. We think that probably most of your questions will come in these areas. Then we want to make sure that we leave plenty of time for the trustees to ask questions, to discuss among yourselves, and to see whether or not this is a place where we can go as a school board to really benefit the children who live in our community and to make our parents feel safe. This is an important topic. I don't want to minimize that at all. And we want to do the best thing we can for our students and also for our families. So with that, Jennifer, Ruth Lee is going to go first then. Ruth Lee Calario, principal at Mark Twain Elementary.
Good evening, Ruth Lee.
Good evening. My name is Ruth Lee Calario, and I am the principal at Mark Twain Elementary, and I'm speaking on behalf of my other elementary principal colleagues. This evening, I'm going to talk to you about the operation portion of bringing students back. So we looked at what we do consistently across all sites, and please know, even my students know, first and foremost, my job is to keep everyone safe. I have an utmost belief if students feel safe, they're going to learn, and they're more apt to learn. So that's always super important. It's important to me, and my students will even tell you that they know my first and primary job is to keep them safe. So we have really worked to build consistency among our sites. So no matter what site you go to, the same expectation and that kind of thing is prevailing. So first and foremost, we make sure that the masks are required by everyone, both students and staff, and they're inspected. I will speak towards my site on that. All students, if they are not wearing a mask before they even enter the building, we have stations that students will get one. So when they come off the bus, if they don't have a mask, we ask them, we give them and provide them with a mask to make sure they have it. At every entrance, there's an adult staff member to make sure. Every classroom teacher has a supply of student-sized masks. So if a student's mask breaks, they lose it, they can't find it, it drops outside and it gets all wet. We make sure that they have a mask for them. The students honestly have done an excellent job. Everybody's concern at the beginning was that the students would not wear them, they would take them down. They really have done a fantastic job on ensuring that they wear the mask. All the exit to recess, lunch, and the end of the day are done on staggered time. So it minimizes the number of students crossing or staff crossing, and they're all going in the same direction. So most of us have a staggered time at 1 to 5 minute increment to make sure that you're not having 600 kids and staff members in a hallway at the same time exiting the buildings. Most of our buildings have minimal exits to go to buses or to pick up, and so we've made sure that those times are staggered. They also use multiple exits, so not everyone is funneling through one spot. And that is the same for recess and for exit and entering into the building in the school day. Safety signs are done throughout. Our operations department and ANSEER has done a really great job in providing for us all kinds of safety signs as far as directional ways to walk, directions on how to make sure your hands are clean and sanitized, and they're posted throughout the schools. Parents and non-staff members don't get to enter those schools beyond a certain point, which parents have accepted really well. And then for us on our morning announcements, we constantly remind students to keep your social distancing, make sure you wash your hands when you leave the room, make sure you wash your hands when you enter the room, and if washing is not available, to use hand sanitizer. And so the staff and the students have done that very well as well. Routines for each environment have been established at all the sites on how you enter into the cafeteria, how you, at my site, we call it walking the dots. They really do very well with that. They know that they're going down one side of the hallway and coming up the other side of the hallway. And so those routines, even going into a classroom, have been maintained very well by our teachers and our paraprofessionals and anyone else that kind of comes into the buildings. Student supplies, typically in a classroom situation, you put student supplies in the middle of a team and the students share them. It is not done that way anymore. There is only single supplies to each student. So that same pair of scissors belong to that same student no matter what, that same box of crayons, those same pencils. They're not put into a community piece to where they would share them with someone else. And so that has cut down greatly. So that includes any type of manipulatives, supplies that they would use to do their academics. Their computers are not shared, the cords are not shared, the seats are not shared. So even if they have students that sit on a floor spot like in kindergarten or pre-K, those are in the same exact spots every single time. So it's that same student in that same spot. Currently, right now, we have not used any playground equipment such as balls or things that they would have multiple hands touching them. So balls are a big one that kids use a lot in elementary. I was a little worried about it, to be honest with you, that they would have enough to do. Trust me, they have found more than enough to do. Our site, we do have jump rope because that belongs to individual students and their names are written on those. But all of our sites have utilized it to where kids have a routine on how to utilize the play equipment and games that our PE teachers have provided to us that have no contact. And so that has allowed a great safety piece with that as well. Our students and our staff all have hygiene products available to them at multiple sites inside of their classroom. So if you go inside of a classroom, there are more than one station for a hand sanitizer pump, plus the sink where they can wash their hands. There's throughout the hallways, throughout the cafeteria, they're at the end of each table, so when they sit down, they get it. When they exit, they get it. And so those students do a really great job in being able to utilize that. And then the hygiene protocols, the staff has been trained very well in what the janitors do for us each night. And they do an excellent job in ensuring that our schools are clean and ensuring our staff to know that what has been completed so they can feel safe as well. And then finally, PPE equipment is available, such as gowns, gloves, masks for any staff member or any other individual that would need that. So often if you have a kind of a messy little younger child, you have the availability to have a full gown, gloves, shields if you need that. That would require you to take care of those special needs students. And those are provided to every staff member that desires them or wants them. So that's what we have in common in regards to our operational information. I'm Don't know if you want to ask questions now or wait till the very end of our presentation.
We'll go Joe, and then Richard, were you indicating you have a question? Okay.
Since we're on the topic, Ruth Lee, thank you. You know, I know our custodians have been working real hard, and we've had shortages of multiple staff for various reasons. And I'm guessing there's, like with all of us, there's been a learning curve in this.
Yeah.
You've mentioned the custodians are doing well, keeping things clean, following the disinfection schedule. Do you anticipate with more kids coming back into school? How do you anticipate that, I guess is my question.
So the procedures.
Impacting their workload.
Yes, that's a great question. So the procedures that they do not limit it to just the individual desks that students sit in. So when they go in and they clean a classroom, they're sanitizing all the desks that are in there, all the seats that are in there, no matter if it's 2 children that are in that classroom that day or there's 20 children that are in that classroom that day. So I don't foresee that piece of it. I do foresee a little bit more trash. I see, which our staff, most of the time, they make sure that the trash is put outside the door to minimize the amount of time that it takes. I don't foresee a lot of extra time, but it does take teamwork, because I know many of our sites are down a custodial staff, and the operations department is working with us to try to get that resolved. So.
And I apologize, Ruth Lee. If I could just remind everybody, please keep your masks on to be in compliance with the governor's orders. I'd appreciate that. And that's just pull the microphone close enough and then we'll be able to hear you.
Perfect, thank you. Any other questions in regards to operation?
Yes, I do. On one chart that's in our packet, it shows some of the classrooms are going to have 22 to 28 students. With the classrooms that have 28 students, is there going to be enough room for the distancing that's required?
My largest class size is 25. In our classrooms, we can fit 26. So every classroom has a slight different square footage. And so what we've done with that classroom that I know I'm going to have that many, we literally have mapped out the entire room to make sure those students can fit. I would defer that question to whoever has 28 students in their class.
Just a question, and maybe it's more of a comment. You mentioned if the students get off the bus without a mask, and I'm guessing they probably came onto the bus with a mask and sometime it disappeared because they're kids. But maybe for an operational thing, it would be helpful just to ensure that the buses have masks in case there are any students at the stop who have forgotten it so that they can put it on, and just to try to eliminate it. I know what kids, how they lose things without knowing they've lost it.
So I have let our parents know that should a child forget their mask, that, you know, it's really, it's a non-issue because we don't, you know, call them out on it or anything. They're just handed one and we help them with it, and we make sure if they get dirty or something, they don't have one. You know, we have multiple supplies throughout the school that the operations department has provided for us. So most of our parents know that. Our parents are usually pretty good about providing masks for their students. My biggest thing that we've seen is when parents provide their child with an adult-sized mask when they're too big for them, and so it doesn't protect as well as it could.
Trustee Crossman, if I could just add a little bit more to that. And starting the school year, it was a little rough. We had some events that happened where not all of our adults would remember their masks, and we provided them. We had to take some extra precautions to make sure that all of our buses had enough of those materials on there so that when a student arrived at a stop and they didn't have that mask, they were able to be given one. But we did have a few events where we didn't have those on the bus, but we've since corrected that problem, and I don't believe we've had any issues since. But thank you for mentioning that.
I think in all honesty, it's just become their habit now.
I've seen that with my own kids. My younger one is better at remembering, but they're all very good at it, remembering.
Yeah.
I think that's true. We're all worried about the little ones. I think it's the older ones who forget more than the little ones in my experience.
Yeah. So.
Thank you, Ruth Lee. We might come
Thank you.
back to you with more questions after the next section.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Good evening, Jen.
Hello, Jennifer Ward to Joseph for the record. This evening, I am presenting on social emotional impacts. As you can imagine, the last 9 months have been the subject of many professional development organizations, professional medical organizations to write professionally on this topic. I think locally, our social workers can fully explain how impactful this last 9 months have been on our students. The social emotional impacts can be told by our families, both as a family structure, providing asynchronous work, as well as the emotional toll of just not having a normal week, not seeing their friends, not seeing their teachers, not being part of normal school. And I think not only do our parents see it, but our students can communicate that. We had the opportunity to have Mr. Varner come, and our first graders were able to communicate how difficult it is to do things on their own at home. That asynchronous time is really impactful on our students, not just academically, but that's social emotional. And I think that that's another part of our struggle, is not to forget our staff. This has had a huge emotional impact on our staff. These teachers thrive on those aha moments, those academic gains, and we go to take a map test or do our schoolwork, and students haven't participated in asynchronous work. Now you have a disconnect. Our map scores show minimal growth from where we could be. And I think the important number to think about tonight is 30. We've had 30 opportunities to see each child face to face, and that's with perfect attendance inside our buildings. Our students have had 30 opportunities to interact with their friends, 30 opportunities to interact with their teachers. And just those minimal amounts, although a greater gift than what we were able to give them in our fourth quarter last year, I'm hoping we can do better for our second semester for these kiddos. And that's all that I have for research says.
Do you have any questions, Richard?
I don't really have a question, but I'd just like to say I did visit Fremont Elementary yesterday, and I appreciate it. Thank you, Dr. Ward. And I was able to visit several classrooms, and in one particular classroom, I asked the students, and they were first, second graders, if they would rather be in school or would they rather be learning from home. And to a student, each one said that they'd rather be in school. And for numerous reasons, they're able to learn better, they're able to visit their friends. And I was really quite happy that we got that response, because these are students who've been back in the classroom. While I was there, I was also able to talk to several of the teachers about the students returning third to sixth grade. And the teachers that I was able to talk to did not have any concerns about the students returning full-time. In fact, they were excited about the possibility of this occurring. I was also able to visit several upper grade, third through fifth grade classrooms, and I was shown how the classrooms are going to be set up. And it appeared to me that there was going to be adequate room to social distance. So I just wanted to share that with everybody. And also today, I talked to a Washoe County teacher who has had her class in the whole year. And she stated emphatically that she felt it was very, very important for the kids to be in school. They're learning better, and they're not having any problems with the social distancing. And also talked to the chief nurse, and she encouraged, stated that she felt the kids should be back in school. So I think there's a lot of support out there for the kids to come back. And I do appreciate you allowing me to come into your room. And I'd also like to thank Rhonda Allison, one of your teachers, for taking the time to let me come in and talk to the students and herself.
Anytime.
Thank you.
Stacy, go ahead.
So as long as we're on the social emotional part, we've had the social workers during this period, right? How will their role expand if we get all the kids back in?
So our hope is to have eyes on the student more often. The more often we see our students, the more often we're able to identify possible issues that might be occurring with our kiddos. And utilizing our social workers to the fullest extent by having that intervention time and being able to have those conversations that we currently are trying to catch up on. And it's hard when you're every other day, you know? And so I think it's that consistency that allows our social workers to do their full job, to interact not only on tier 1, but utilize their skills for our tier 2 and our tier 3 students who are in a situation that not many of us could handle.
President Walker, if I could add just a little bit, Dr. Ward DeJoseph mentioned that number 30. We're nearing the end of our first semester. Typically, the number of days in a semester is 90. So that's a comparison as to, you know, the loss, really, of academic and social emotional considerations for our students.
Well, and I'll just say that, and I've said this a lot, there's a lot more that happens in our schools than people realize, and it's not just lessons, and kids are learning to interact with peers, and they're learning to advocate for themselves, and there's just a whole host of things, services that are happening for these kids that most people would never even know our schools were doing, providing clothing, food, additional counseling services, and the likes, that I think it's just really important that we have access to these kids and get them what they need, because the impacts of this pandemic are going to be far-reaching. We're going to be dealing with this for a long time.
I agree.
Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, I agree. I mean, when you talk about the social emotional well-being for the students, I think it's impacting the adults too.
Very much
You know,
so.
I mean, the staff, it's a different way of life. The teachers are, you know, now not only trying to regulate a classroom, they're regulating an online environment. The attendance issue, they're chasing down students who, chasing down is the wrong term, but they're inquiring as to where these students are when they don't show up for the Zoom, you know, for the online learning. And so all these things are impacting a number of issues. And so the morale's affecting adults. And I'm sure what everybody else has been hearing, as I'm hearing, is not so much that anybody disagrees with all this stuff. I think most people agree that these are all valid. But the ones who are against this are saying that's all well and good, but you're putting people at risk, more risk than maybe they feel they need to be. And, you know, from what I read, you can find a link and get whatever answer you want. But for the most part, CDC, I believe the World Health Organization, the medical society is generally saying they're not seeing super spreaders and all this stuff at the schools, as I understand it. Bringing kids back to school appears to be safe. You know, it's not perfect, but it's safe. We're not seeing a lot of issues associated with it. So when you weigh the health risk and the academic risks and whatnot, you know, I think the science is supporting the consideration of coming back to schools.
Well, and I think not only that, but also, you know, as a kudos to all of our principals, there's been months and months of preparation and work on making sure that these campuses are regularly sanitized and that our classrooms are situated so that students are distanced. And, you know, there's a lot of thought and care that goes into even just how kids are dismissed from class. It's been a lot of work, and I think that the fact that we don't have super spreading events is probably because our professionals in the schools have taken great care to keep these kids and our staff safe. And so that's kudos to them.
President Walker, Trustee Ramirez has a comment.
Sure. Go ahead, Lupe, and then Richard could go after that.
Thank you. I just wanted to reiterate on one of the comments that we received from one of the teachers. Her comment was that students' mental health is definitely declining, and she quoted it. I'm quoting what she said. This is a tragedy, and I think we can all concur with that. I mean, we've already seen local vandalism happening. We definitely don't want this to escalate. So I definitely think that we are recognizing the importance of the social emotional aspect.
Thank you, Lupe.
I can understand the concern that some of the staff have about bringing the kids back due to the COVID. But as I think about it, they're seeing those kids, the same kids, 2 days a week anyway. So it's not like we're bringing in students that they're not already seeing.
Correct.
So I just kind of wanted to point that out.
Thank you. Same thing I said to Ruth Lee, we might call you back for further questions.
I'll be right here.
Thank you. Susan, how's it going tonight?
Very well, thank you. I tried to kick the punching bag at the gym and tweak my back this morning, but I'm standing upright.
If you're going to kick
You
something,
can
it might as
thank
well be the punching
your
bag.
daughter-in-law for that,
Yeah, don't let
Mr. Varner.
Desiree work you too hard.
Yeah. But thank you for letting me be here and spend some time with you this evening. So I'd like to just talk a little bit about the academic impact of all of our students not being in the seat. This certainly isn't the number one thing that we do at schools, but we are teachers and we are there to teach them academics. When our teachers come in to begin teaching Carson City School District, they are all trained in the SIOP model. And if you're unfamiliar with SIOP, we believe that it is our job as educators to foster students' ability to do 4 things, and this is the SIOP model. It's to read, to foster their ability to write, to speak, and to listen. When our students are in the seat, our teachers are able to provide opportunities for them to speak with their peers or listen to other people, such as their peers and their teachers. Now, I have watched not only my own remote teachers from my site, but also from other sites attempt these 4 things online with either remote learning or async learning, and it is not happening. When our students are in the seat, our teachers give them chances to write about authentic experiences. A lot of those experiences happen in the school because a lot of our students don't have authentic experiences outside of the school. Having them do these activities asynchronously or remotely does not give them the same opportunities to be able to write. Our teachers want to give our students the opportunity in seat to being able to read books in book clubs with other peers and to hear teachers and other students read and for them to be able to read themselves. This is not happening on async days. The majority of what's happening on async days are a bit of time on ST Math and a bit of time on My On Reading. And the async lessons that are being prepared by our teachers who are spending incredible amounts of time are not even being opened and looked at. The teachers in our schools believe in giving opportunities for students to be grouped with others, which allow for activities so that they can interact and have hands-on practice, and for our teachers to be able to scaffold for individual needs. For asynchronous learning, we're not able to scaffold for individual needs. And during remote learning, when you have 18 to 25 kids staring back at you on a screen, you cannot scaffold for their individual needs. In our classrooms, we are able to provide meaningful activities with supplemental materials and resources like manipulatives, seeds and soil, small objects that start with the letter M. Our teachers are trying to send this stuff home for async learning and for remote learning, but oftentimes the students can't find them, they're not prepared with them, and we can't assure that they have those things that they need for the lessons. Our teachers in our schools instruct with excitement, and in return can have students be excited. I did a formal observation on one of my remote teachers, clearly one of the best teachers I have in my building, teaching remote. She's excited, she's passionate, and all she received back was silence. No interaction. Her kids don't know how to speak to a computer screen. They don't know how to speak to their teachers on a computer screen. They cannot speak to each other. Our teachers assess by watching a student form letters and hear them make sounds. Asynchronously, we don't hear them at all. And on remote, they can sometimes not even unmute themselves so that we can hear them. In our remote and our async learning, as hard as our teachers, and I have met with them from other schools as well, are trying, our teachers receive back silence, stares, oftentimes black screens because students don't turn on their camera, blank assignments that they get turned in, but they're turned in blank, and we get a loss of relationships. So I'm asking you to please passionately consider allowing our students to return to seat.
I can relate to what you're saying about the remote teachers. I've been in several classrooms and watched the teachers teach remotely. In fact, at your school, excellent teacher, but there was one student that she was trying to engage, and there was some kind of family trouble going on, and that student was not engaging, and there were several other things that occurred. And I also talked to another teacher at another school who was teaching remotely, and they basically said if they had to do over again, they'd prefer not to be a remote teacher because it is frustrating, it is hard to keep the students engaged. So I do think that the students are really missing out via the remote learning. And I've also been told that some students are turning things in, but they're not completing assignments. So if a parent looks, it looks like their assignments were turned in, but then when the teacher looks at it, there's been no work done. Mm-hmm. Is that correct?
Yes, indeed. And I'd like to say that, of course, it doesn't happen with every student. We have many students in our schools whose parents are involved, whose parents are helping them complete their assignments. But the majority of times, that is not happening. And the events that are happening around them in their home, whether it's a remote student or just a student who's on his async day, don't allow for our students to be able to complete their work or even to know what to do for their work. I wanted to speak just quickly on MAP assessments. So we are just now finishing our winter MAP assessments. And our teachers were excited to come and share the increase from fall to winter in their MAP assessment scores because there was an increase. But when you look further at it, what we should be comparing is winter of last year, which was the last time we took them, to winter of this year, and we have not even met winter of last year. That is how much our students have lost not being in seat for instruction.
I noticed on this chart we have here in our packet that one of your third grade classrooms has 27 students and another one has 28 with 17 remote. With those kind of numbers, are you going to adequately be able to space them apart for social distancing?
Well, that's what it looks like right now. When we have surveyed our parents, and we have more than half of those third grades in remote that will be coming back into seat. So what we are doing, and I can only speak for us, is we're taking that remote teacher in third grade and putting her in seat. So we'll have 3 third grade in seat, and we're splitting a remote. We have one teacher who'll do a 5th grade remote and a 3rd grade remote, so those class sizes can be smaller.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Laurel.
Yeah, just a comment.
Susan, we might have one more question, sorry.
I'm not sure it's a question so much as a comment, but just the, one of the things I've been concerned about with the 2 days in person is with our English learners, because they need that additional opportunity to speak and listen with their peers and with their teachers. I've also, when you talk about special populations, I've been concerned about our special ed kids who some are really in need of that consistency and needing that interaction and routine that it helps them so much. So I see that being a great benefit by bringing those kids back, and it helps us to provide just a better opportunity for them to engage. And just academically, I guess it's social emotional too, but thinking of my own kids who have gotten savvy on how to sit at home on async days, acting like they're doing stuff, but they've found other things to do on their computers, which you say, are you working on this? Oh, yes, until you get closer, and then they close the screen really quick. So I think some of these older kids have figured out how to do that. But the benefit of in-person learning with the teachers can do things that even engaged parents can't do for their kids. I think of my 5th grader who came home from the first day back in class and was so excited because his teacher had used something that he did as an example, and she winked at him. And the feeling that he had, it still almost makes me cry, because I'm like, I can't give that to him, where they're singled out in class or noted that you've got this, but that pays so many dividends to a kid, and teachers are so good at doing that for them. And I feel bad that they haven't had as much of that opportunity to develop those relationships and get those benefits from it. So,
well, I would just say, as far as our, special populations, especially our second language learners, so fostering the ability to read, write, speak, and listen is the SIAP model is for our second language learners, although every learner benefits from it. Our school personally is focused on just speaking with our entire school, and our kids are just not getting the opportunities to speak, whether it's to speak to their teacher, to speak to their peers, because they aren't there enough to do it. And the time that they are there, teachers are cramming to try to get extra lessons in on a day because they won't see them the next day. Then there is even less time to speak, because you don't have time to stop and let them speak to each other, because you got to get 4 more lessons in. So.
This is Trustee Ramirez. I want to echo on those comments made in regards to the English language learners and having the need to receive instruction in person. Some of the comments that we also received from some of the emails that have been sent to us from teachers have also noted that the students are losing their interest in their education. And that is a big concern, because as we all know, Nevada is one of the states that is not graduating as many students from college. And so with the challenges that we are seeing right now and the students struggling so much, I can anticipate that these percentages are going to get worse. And so obviously it is very clear that we need to bring the students to the classroom so that they can have a potential of being ready for higher education.
Thank you, Lupe.
Mr. President, members of the board, I'd just like to offer a few more comments in summary. First, thanks really to our staff and to our families and to our students. This has been a hard year to get dealt. and it's nobody's fault. And if you think about how we started with our hybrid model, with our remote system, with some families electing to homeschool, and then as we've gradually made some changes to bring more students back and to increase the opportunities, I think that's been helpful. And now we're starting to see more opportunities. For example, just even tomorrow, the state superintendent has provided invitations to start talking about how the vaccines will be distributed. We know that the NIAA is talking about allowing sports to occur after the Christmas break. There's also a discussion to talk about how those return to sports are going to be impacting things like transportation. We have some work to do around just how we're going to get our kids to school. We have plans, but we're going to be asking our families to help us with that, because under the current restrictions, we can't use our buses in the same fashion that they're designed for. So we'll be calling our families, we'll be asking some of them to consider bringing their children to school, so those who maybe do not have that capacity can utilize our buses. We have a little bit of time between now and when we intend to roll this out. For example, if we're given permission tonight to bring our students back, they won't actually begin as we're describing this plan until the 19th of January. That gives our schools and our families a little more time to plan. It also allows for our teachers to get ready from a curriculum and a planning perspective. And then who knows after that? I don't think, however, if we don't try these things, we're not going to know what we're able to do under the current conditions. Our staff, our operational processes, they're in place. So whether we're seeing, as Trustee Varner had mentioned, 300 kids on a given day versus 500, some of the work is still the same. And it's just a matter of making sure that we have provided well enough for all of those activities to occur. So I'd like to again thank my colleagues here tonight who have helped present. I do want to listen to things that our community members have said and also listen to your discussions. And we stand at your disposal to answer any questions that might come up as a result of comments from the public. But thanks for your time and your attention tonight.
So I think, Raymond, do we have any public comment on this matter?
I'm not seeing any public comment at the moment, but it usually takes a minute for the indication to come through.
All right, so we'll start with Ariel. Ariel, I know we do have some public comment in email, so would you share those?
Yes. So the first public comment is from Laura Schuft, a paraprofessional at Carson High School. To whom it may concern, as a parent and a staff member of the Carson City School District, I am able to see both sides of the dilemma. I see the concerns with the health and well-being of staff and students. However, I also see the struggles the students have with not being in seat. I would like my vote for the students 3 to 6 to be back in seat 4 days a week. I fear the longer the children are out of the seat, the further they will fall behind, especially children that require more hands-on help. Please vote yes to have our children back in seat. Thank you. The next public comment is from Denise Huttrick, office manager at Sealiger Elementary. I believe that 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders need to return to school full-time in seat. There has been a lot of lost education during this time. I do understand the reason we have had to have them part remote and part in seat, but I think by January 19th, we need to try to have every student in seat. This is a very difficult time for everyone, and I wanted to express my appreciation and gratitude for all the hard work and difficult decisions making our school district has had to conquer. The next public comment is from Gloria McMacken, a paraprofessional at Student Support Services. Hello, Mr. Stokes. In my opinion, I think this is not the moment to have students in person. We have cases growing immensely, and even that, not so many cases have been reported of schools so far. We are at risk at getting infected anytime with more people circulating at schools every day. Schools were closed in April when COVID-19 was not so intense. Now that it is worse, we are thinking in allowing more contact with the students who can transmit the virus equally than an adult and put everyone at risk. We are short in subs, and this is affecting how we serve our students since when someone gets exposed or infected, that person can't be at school for a period of time and there is not one to work. I absolutely recommend to take all these things into consideration. Thank you. The next public comment is from Brian Peterson, a third grade teacher at Sealiger Elementary. To the board and district school members present. First, I'd like to thank you for your service to our community. During these challenging times, you have done your best to protect the safety of our students and staff and have faced much public criticism and pressure. I would not have wanted to be in your shoes, so thank you. As far returning 3 to 5 students to full-time status, I'd like to share my opinion and experiences. I want it to be known that as an educator, I want all my students in class every day, always. I did not become a teacher to Zoom with kids. That said, I'm opposed to the current plan of returning 3 to 5 students to 4 days a week for a few reasons. First and foremost, equality. Are we really the kind of people that will be willing to give some students such a clear and unfair educational advantage while others will be left behind simply because they don't have transportation? We know that without bus service, many of our most at-risk and vulnerable populations will not be attending school regularly. They simply do not have the ability to get themselves to school. This will result in educational losses that will take years to make up, not to mention that many of these kids get most of their food at school as well. I know that this is like to be kept, I know what it's like to be kept from school and to be hungry from personal experience as a child. If it is an avoidable situation, I would encourage you to do so. I know that parents want and need their children to return to school. I want that too. But without bus service, we are really just picking winners and losers. In addition, I know that we all feel that students will show more growth and have better educational outcomes if they are in class 4 days as opposed to the 2 that they are currently attending. This not be the case though. Certainly, those students who are left behind will not be growing. There is also challenging to understand each other from across the classroom with masks on, not to mention those students in the back row can hardly see the board. Doubling the class sizes, I feel, will result in less individualized instruction and much more challenging communication and behavioral issues. Normally, this wouldn't be a major factor because we can get close and support those students who cannot see or hear, move them closer or sit them with us. Our tool bag has been lightened though. Finally, there is the ever-present safety concern. If the students are doubled in class, then the risk, however minimal or substantial, is doubled. That's just math. More students will get sick, staff, and support staff. At my site, my students eat lunch in the classroom. To have 22 maskless kids eating lunch, risk. That's looking past the logistical issues of just getting all the kids fed and back to class in time, which is already very difficult. Thank you for hearing me out. I respect what you do for our district, students, and staff members. Please think about every student before you make a decision that will 100% guarantee some students will not be able to attend school. The next public comment is from Tracy Deneen, a third grade teacher at Sealiger Elementary School. What data are we using to ensure that this is a productive idea? Perhaps we need to slow down and just keep it that way until next year. Then if by some miracle everything is safe, we can happily go back to normal. The changing is everything has become tiresome and trauma-induced for teachers, parents, and most importantly, students. The fact that the state won't allow full buses should be a clue to the board that perhaps we're not ready to return full-time. If we've learned enough from this crisis, it is to slow down and focus on emotional well-being, since no meaningful learning happens when all involved are under stress. The next public comment is from Wilma Johnson, a paraprofessional at Fritch. As an immunocompromised individual, the thought of having more students in school highly concerns me. My husband is also in the high-risk category. The more students I am in contact with, the higher risk I will be taking. We recently had a death in the family due to COVID complications, and more than ever, we must be careful. I'd like to have better masks and airtight goggles provided for our protection if more students return to school. The next public comment is from Bonnie Benson, a 5th grade teacher at Fritch Elementary School. Good evening. As you consider putting the majority of children back in school before a vaccine is available to teachers or the general public, I must ask you to consider the health of teachers and the community in a few ways. First of all, with numbers rising and the propensity of parents to send children to school whether or not they are ill, I believe teachers should give temperature checks to students as they enter the classroom. With a larger number of students in the classroom, along with all the other responsibilities of the day, the teachers often miss signs of illness in students until they have been there for several hours, thereby exposing everyone in the classroom. Temperature checks upon entering the classroom could lessen this risk. Secondly, the school district needs to adopt a better way of notifying parents and staff if there has been an exposure. Teachers have reported that they have students who are in quarantine, but are not told if they need to worry about exposure. Many teachers feel as if they are in the dark waiting for the hammer to drop. Washoe County has a much more transparent and efficient notification system than what we have in place in Carson, and this should be explored. Furthermore, if one child is positive in a classroom, the entire class and teacher needs to be on quarantine and go to the distance learning. Only quarantining part of the class based on a seating chart is not an effective measure when these students interact on the playground, at lunch, and during specials classes. The third matter of space and social distancing must be addressed. While students are supposed to be 3 feet apart, measuring from hip to hip while they sit in the middle of desks that are 26 inches apart due to the lack of classroom space is a little ridiculous. If the child shifts one way or another, which is the nature of a child to do, then the social distancing space is compromised. One of the reasons that hybrid was chosen is the first place was due to the lack of space in classrooms to adequately socially distance. If adequate space is not available in the classroom, then I would ask that the school board allocate funds for the purchase of plexiglass screens for each desk and be in place before students return. We cannot ignore CDC guidelines for social distancing and not expect consequences. With numbers of cases on the rise and a dire shortage of substitutes, not adhering to these guidelines runs the risk of there not being enough teachers in classrooms to carry out this plan. Finally, any child who continuously refuses to wear a mask should be placed on distance learning. I'm an educator. I want my students back in the classroom full time. I miss the community, and I know it is what is best for them in the normal circumstances. Please be perfectly honest, having them in the classroom is a lot less work than having them hybrid. However, these are not normal circumstances, and part of me wonders if we should be looking at the resiliency, the independence, and the things that they have been learning. These students are Zooming, attending virtual lessons and lectures, completing digital assignments, and they are showing growth academically. The recent MAPS testing scores in my classroom and that of my colleagues proves it. They are surviving a pandemic. Thank you for your time and consideration. The next public comment is from Ruby Tunn, a 6th and 7th grade science teacher at Eagle Valley Middle School. I oppose this option as this comes as a time in which families have been traveling for the holidays and vaccines for COVID-19 have not been allocated to teaching staff at this point of the calendar year. I have had many students absent throughout the first semester due to either the student contracting COVID-19 or family members that have had COVID-19, thereby exposing their children, my students, to COVID-19. This is a very risky consideration to make as the numbers of positive cases within Carson City continues to rise. Perhaps a safer time to consider meeting 4 times per week is after all parties, teachers, and students have been vaccinated for the virus and the risk has significantly been reduced. I would not feel safe nor comfortable with a situation that would ask me to risk my life as well as the health of my family to have students come back in greater numbers more often each week. This would only increase my risk of being exposed. The next public comment is from Beverly Singleton, a paraprofessional at Fritch Elementary. Dear board members, regarding bringing all 3rd to 6th grade students back to school sites on January 19th, I think we can agree that everyone would love to be able to do that. However, based on observations and data, I don't believe it to be the best option. We must frequently remind students to wear their masks properly, to not touch one another on the playground, and to remain 3 feet apart. We have some parents who send their child to school even when they are sick. Last week, I observed students on buses not following the guidelines of sitting in alternating opposite sides, but instead sitting one behind the other while the other side of the aisle was empty. One seat had 2 students sitting together. Superintendent Stokes said, even though we're still working toward overcoming barriers to putting more students back in our schools, we may have to be asking for some support from our families. Stokes said, if they do want to come back, we may need to ask them to make a way either to bring their children to school or to support them in getting to school other than our buses, because we won't have the ability to lift a complete governmental restriction of putting our students on our buses. What about parents who work and can't do this? If we bring full classes back, how will we be able to have no more than 50 people in the cafeteria for lunch? As of now, at our site, each grade goes to lunch at 20-minute intervals. That works when you have half the students, but getting 3 full classes through the line will most likely result in some students being allowed 5 to 10 minutes to eat before they have to leave. I find it odd that this district cannot get a weekly update of information when Washoe County School District is able to update 3 times a week. As of 12/10, they had 1,125 active cases for people in 0 to 18 age group, 86% between the ages of 5 and 18. On December 12th, we had 350 for the same age group, and that number increases almost daily. From Friday evening to Saturday evening, we saw a total increase of 176 active cases in our community. According to COVIDactnow.org, Carson City is currently experiencing a severe outbreak and recommends enabling remote learning for all students. That seems extreme when the hybrid model is working. Staff from other sites have said that they've been told not to tell anyone if they're positive and not to ever discuss COVID. With the secrecy and lack of information, it's no wonder that there's a lack of trust by staff, parents, and our community in general. Governor Sisolak has extended his most current plan until January 15th, with the possibility of stricter restrictions if need be. He spoke of the vaccine coming soon. Perhaps we should wait and see if that helps decrease the number of cases before returning our schools to full capacity. Thank you for your time. The next public comment is from Carol Ruff, the Instructional Program Coordinator for Carson High School. Hello there. I have worked for the Carson City School District for 28 years. I have worked in different positions for the district. First, I was a para for the CLS program, then as an interpreter for the deaf, and then as a transitional employment specialist. No longer a program in our district. And finally, as a para in CTE program. The reason I'm telling you all of this is that I want you to know the experience I have had supporting teachers and students in different capacities. All I can say is, where would a doctor be without his nurse? Where would a lawyer be without his paralegal? Where would a CEO be without their secretaries? Where would a superintendent be without their support staff? Where would a director of a program be without their support staff? So on and so on. My point being that there are support staff in a lot of different companies, and without them, someone is going to suffer. Whether it be businesses, patients, administrators, teachers, and the last but definitely not least, the students, aka our children. Without the pairs, people are going to struggle, suffer. I would hate to see our students not have the one-on-one help that some of them need to get on track and be successful. Please really think about this. Do the support staff have the education that teachers have? No, but without the support staff, the teachers would have a lot more responsibility put on an already overloaded workload. It's hard to keep good teachers than to tell them that they will have no support to help them with students that need a little more attention, maybe a breaking point, and make their decision easier to go work for a district that will have support for them and their students. This especially is important in the special education program. Please consider all points that I have made in this email, because overall, if you start letting employees go from the bottom up, please sit back and think about who the most important people are we must consider in a school district, the students. Thank you for your time. The next public comment is from Deanne Foley, one of our school nurses at Carson Middle School. Good evening, trustees. Tonight, the board is facing a difficult decision for reasons we all know and highly value. Children flourish with in-person instruction. There is no doubt that in-person instruction promotes education's positive results. But positive results are not what healthcare needs. Carson City's COVID numbers are highly elevated. Our healthcare system is running at top speed, at max capacity. This week's Carson Tahoe Hospital has a record 78 COVID inpatients, pushing lower acuity inpatients to other places such as Sierra Surgery and the old hospital on Fleshman. The cascade effect forces elective surgeries and procedures to be postponed. This disrupts the schedules of patients, doctors, staff, and community workplaces. Carson Tahoe has had 229 employees with COVID. Staff are in constant rotation, covering shifts in different departments due to their own COVID exposures and illnesses. They are taking care of our loved ones, our friends, our family, even the district staff and students. Just as district staff cover one another for absences, healthcare staff are doing that also, but doing it 24/7. Most young children with COVID remain asymptomatic or only develop mild symptoms, but they unknowingly spread it to others who are less fortunate. We know that students are riding buses and coming to school when they actively have COVID or a household member has COVID. Bringing students back and doubling their time on campus at the height of the pandemic will further impact our healthcare system. The COVID vaccine is rolling out to frontline hospital staff. Herd immunity is achievable, but will take time. The likelihood of district staff and general public being vaccinated is months away. The school year is halfway over, but the pandemic is worse than ever. Please support our healthcare force and vote to maintain the current hybrid schedule until we get through our peak COVID and flu season. Respectfully, Deanne Foley. The next public comment is from Travis Miller. Hello, members of the board. My name is Travis Miller and my children attend CCSD. I'm writing today to voice my pressing concerns as bringing back 3 to 5 grade 4 days a week. In my opinion, this is a grave and irresponsible choice for families of students and the community at whole. There is no data or research showing that the curve will be sufficiently flattened in the next 30 days. In fact, with the holiday break approaching, it is expected to actually increase. Today, the 16th of December, 2020, there were over 3,400 COVID-related deaths today, and total of 314,577 people with COVID diagnosed. That is more than Pearl Harbor or September 11, and the numbers are increasing daily. I understand that some families are affected more than others, and the money per day care is hard. I feel for those families. My family is not rich either, and we have had to make major adjustments. I believe, however, that the quickest route to ending this pandemic is by continuing the protocols we have been using. I implore the board to consider the larger picture. There are many families in the CCSD community that have multiple generations living in single domicile. By increasing the student population, it is exponentially increasing the risk. While it is true that older folks and those with pre-existing conditions are at greater risk of death, multiple large-scale studies have shown that an increasing number of those healthy younger people who are infected are having long-term negative effects, i.e. loss in cognitive function, weakened heart, circulatory issues, strokes, blood clots, etc. There is no way to guarantee how COVID will affect individuals, and at this moment, it is more irresponsible to bring more students back than to continue the schedule already in place. The students have spent the first half of the school year adapting to the schedule and in place, and the teachers have done a phenomenal job adjusting as well. The safety of school staff should be considered as well. The schedule should remain in place until vaccines are available to a larger number of the general population, expected in summer of 2021. I understand the desire to return to normalcy, and that is my desire too. Still, I adamantly believe bringing students back prematurely will unnecessarily increase the risk to Carson Valley. We feel sheltered in our little valley, and it can add a sense of false security, which is very dangerous. The next 6 months is more important to remain vigilant and continue to fight the COVID fatigue we are all experiencing. My kids are good students, and I know they are not receiving the same education remotely than they would in person. Children are much more resilient when we give them credit for and while they're in a drop in certain educational functions. With the split schedule, it is not all negative. Since the start of this pandemic, our students have dealt with a lot of change and uncertainty, and I believe it is helping them grow resiliency and fortitude. I strongly ask this board to consider a long-term approach when they rule. If you rule on what is more convenient and popular now, we will cause the problems to get worse and last longer. Continuing to use safe practices and mitigating risks by keeping the capacity.
Ariel, that's 3 minutes, so we'll include the remainder of the comments in our record.
The next public comment is from Kirsten Pykars, a teacher at Carson Middle School. I more than anything else want students back in classrooms, but I also realize what I want is irrelevant, and we need to listen to science and look at our own community spread to make informed decisions during this pandemic. Studies have shown that kids, specifically those under the age of 12, are at low risk for getting and transmitting the disease. This on its own would be a good indicator that we should have those students back full time, but this is assuming we have low community transition rates and the ideal environment to identify and trace outbreaks, as low risk does not mean immune. Right now, our health department is overwhelmed and cases are at an all-time high. Testing is taking up to 7 days for results from some individuals. Contact tracing is all but impossible, and even our own schools can no longer keep track of cases and report them to the public. Bringing large numbers of students back in contact, especially after the holidays, is irresponsible and threatens to drown our already overwhelmed health departments. At the time of writing this, Carson City has the second highest cases per 100,000 of all Nevada's counties and 30% testing positive rate, according to the COVID-19 DHHS dashboard county tracker. I know we are in between a rock and a hard place, but no, it's not the time to bring students back. The next public comment is from the Ormsby County Education Association. The Ormsby Education Association is the voice of Carson City educators. OCEA represents the majority of educators in Carson City, including teachers and other licensed education professionals. In our history, there have been few more challenging times than the past year with COVID-19 crisis. After school buildings were ordered closed last spring, OCEA members quickly responded with classroom teachers engaging their students in distance education and our other licensed professionals providing support through a variety of means. This semester, our members are responding in a diversity of ways dependent upon their job assignment, with some members juggling full in-person learning, hybrid, and distance education. Educators, as much as anyone else, appreciate the importance of returning to school for in-person learning. Distance education is not an ideal replacement for in-person. Most educators find distance learning and hybrid models more difficult, with more time required to teach the same lessons. The impact it has on students with disabilities, issues with absenteeism, and the impact the COVID-19 crisis is having on education equality. However, educators are very concerned about their health and the well-being of students. OCEA has consistently worked with the Carson City School District to resolve issues around Governor Sisolak's Emergency Directive 028. The Carson City School District has been in a fortunate situation of having the resources to safely reopen schools in a hybrid model under Emergency Directive 028. We have worked together to continue to ensure students and staff feel safe while in the hybrid model. With the consideration of increasing in-person learning to elementary grades 3rd to 5th grade and 6th grade for the middle school, we must still adhere to the Emergency Directive 028. Per Section 2, we must continue to ensure that our elementary and middle school students are spaced at least 3 feet apart. Per Section 4, we must continue to ensure that all kindergarten through 12th grade students and all our staff wear cloth face coverings while in school. We must continue supporting all of our students and our staff members in protecting their health. Without this support, our schools cannot operate if our staff do not feel safe or are exposed, resulting in the need to quarantine. Our substitute situation is already dire, and the potential of staff needing to be absent due to the exposure at sites only compounds the situation. If it is decided to increase in-person learning, we must work to communicate with the impacted grade levels that the requirements under Emergency Directive 028 will be followed and that the health and safety of all is priority number 1. With the recent good news on the development and now implementation of the COVID-19 vaccination, OCEA is hopeful that we will soon be able to return to in-person for all grade levels. Thank you. The next public comment is from Mike Sherlock. Please allow this email to serve as my public comment and be entered into the record for December 17th, 2020 meeting. I am asking the school board, allow our students to attend school in person now. As a parent of 2 Carson City School District elementary school children, I have seen the negative impact of the politics of the shutting down our schools and livelihoods. We are teaching our children that a virus which does not kill you, which has little effect on both children and working age adults when compared to many other health and safety issues, is cause enough to shut down our education system. We are teaching our children that education is not very important in the big scheme of things. This lockdown enforcing virtual or part-time schooling is negatively affecting not only the education of our children, but also the physical and mental well-being of our children. Over the last 2 weeks, CCHHS has reported 7 deaths in the Quad County related to this virus. The youngest being in their 70s, 2 being in their 90s, and 1 in their 100s. This is consistent with the mortality of this virus and also consistent with the hospitalization as a result of this virus. Parents and students live in the real world and understand there are far greater threats to our children. Teachers and school administrators should also live in the real world. The evidence is clear. If you are not elderly, if you do not have a serious underlying health condition, get back to school and get back to work. The very education and well-being of our children are at stake. To delay the return to school is not supported by the medical evidence and would simply be political. Thank you. The next public comment is from Karen Weber. Hi, I'm a parent of a 5th grade daughter in Fremont Elementary. Due to this situation, to go 4 days a week, it has caused a lot of strain on her learning ability. Yeah, and I am possibly considering having her repeat 5th grade again. We just had her IEP, and it is a pretty much top of the line right now. That is if not granted that 3rd through 5th grade students, all of them, but at least maybe the ones with IEP are able to go back 4 days a week. If they're not, then I'm going to have her repeat 5th grade because she's not going to be able to be ready to move on. So I would like this to be considered that they bring back 3rd through 5th grade. And if they decide not to, maybe they can consider the IEP 3rd through 5th grade. They really need the education and the one-on-one and social. The next public comment is from Steve and Katie Miner, who are parents of students in the Carson City School District. Hello, we have 5 children, 8th, 7th, 5th, 3rd, and 1st grades, currently enrolled in Carson City School District, participating in the hybrid program. We have always strived to actively participate in remote learning, encouraged our children to complete their assignments, and worked to have our kids in school whenever possible. Even with doing everything we possibly can to promote learning and education within the parameters that have been set, we have noticed a significant decrease in the academic gains of our children compared to the previous years, as well as increased stress and responsibility put on us as parents to help them be happy and successful. Not to mention the limited and social learning from not having as much time in the classroom with their peers. These observations have been particularly obvious in our youngest, elementary age children, and especially frustrating and devastating to our 3rd grader who has autism and needs extra supports to learn and grow as a person. The gain she makes in the few days she is in school working and trained professionals far exceeds what I am able to accomplish with her remote learning the other 3 days of the week. Since our 1st grader has been able to return to school full-time, we have seen an improvement in his academics and his overall zeal for life. We are hoping that tonight the board will vote to allow our 3rd and 5th graders to return to the school 4 days a week as well. For our family, the risks pale in comparison to the benefits of having our kids in school full-time with their peers being instructed by trained teaching professionals. Please vote to get our kids into school 4 days a week. Thank you. The next public comment is from Aiden Aguilar, a parent of a student in our Carson City School District. My name is Aiden Aguilara. I have 2 children enrolled in schools here in Carson City. Why is the Carson City School Board considering opening the schools back up full-time, K through 6? The coronavirus cases are going up all across our state and the country. The state governmental offices are for the most part closed. They are working from home remotely. Shouldn't state and local government agencies, i.e. Carson City School District, be responding to this pandemic uniformly? Shouldn't we be protecting our children in the same fashion we're protecting ourselves? So why would we open the schools back up? Now is not the time to send our kids back full-time. This feels like a rash decision. Our hospitals are being overwhelmed, as well as people getting sick. Our children are safest at home. My family is adhering to the coronavirus pandemic guidelines, but I can't verify that other families that have children attending my kids' schools are doing the same. I'm a member of the community in Carson City, and unfortunately I've seen way too many people not wearing masks in public and having get-togethers and living life like normal. It's ridiculous. Children can spread the virus as easily as you and me. The virus is real, people are dying, and we all need to do everything we can to help stop the spread. Do not open the schools back up full-time. If anything, go full remote until everyone has been able to receive the vaccine. Kind regards, Aiden Aguilara. The next public comment is from Uriah Wise. We have a youngster that is a part of this age group you are discussing about putting back in the classroom 4 days a week. We understand that everyone is having hardships and going through such a difficult time right now, but our family is concerned of the potential increased risk of more students in the classroom for an extended amount of time. As of right now, it's a third of the kids in the classroom for 2 days and not 2/3 of the kids in the classroom for 4 days. Are you guys okay with your children coming down with COVID and spreading it to your family? And let me just check our inbox really quick to make sure nothing else has come in. At this time, there are no further public comments in the email.
Thank you, Ariel. I appreciate that. Raymond, do we have any online?
We do. We have one individual. Story, you are unmuted. Please state your name for the record and provide your public comment.
You might still be muted, Stormy. I think it's on the bottom left-hand corner of the screen.
Oh, this is Sheila Story. I'm the school nurse at Carson High School and the chief nurse for the Carson City School District, for the record. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. I did speak with Trustee Varner in regards to students coming back to school, kindergarten through sixth grade, and I did tell them that I was in support of it in regards to the students' safety, health, well-being, and academic success. I truly do believe that in-seat, in-person learning is much more effective. We have seen a large effect on them academically. We've seen a large effect on them socially, emotionally, and physically. With that being said, I do want to ensure all families within the school district that we do have our school nurses within our schools. They are there for you and your family in regards to their health and safety while at school and their well-being. We do provide assessment, and we do follow the guidelines of the Carson City Health and Human Services in regards to the signs and symptoms of COVID, whether they should be in school or sent home, and we do take that very seriously. Any child who enters into our office, we do assess them, and if we do feel they need to go home, they are sent home. We do contact the parents, and we encourage them to stay home until they're symptom-free for 24 hours without any over-the-counter medications on board. We also have isolation rooms that help keep other children safe if there is a child with symptoms or of possible COVID. We also talk to a lot of families, faculty, staff each day, and give them guidance and education on how they can stay safe and how their students can stay safe while at school. One other thing we do is we truly do utilize our custodial staff. Any student who leaves the school due to possible COVID-like symptoms, we do ask that the rooms are fogged and cleaned as soon as possible, like in between classes or at lunchtime, that type of thing, to ensure the safety for our faculty and staff, that we are trying to keep the classrooms as sanitized and clean as possible. A couple of things. Richard Stokes spoke about us having a meeting. We do have a meeting tomorrow, all school nurses and chief nurses within the state of Nevada, in regards to rolling out an immunization program within each school and how we can immunize students as quickly as possible. I do not have a time frame. I'm sure we'll find out more information tomorrow. With all this being said, I am concerned with Carson City Health and Human Services being overwhelmed with the cases that we are having within our community. And it is difficult to say, what is that threshold for allowing all students to return back to school or keep them home? So I think we need to stay vigilant on our community numbers. We need to keep in constant communication with Carson City Health and Human Services to maintain a safe environment for our children and our community. But I will say, I do feel that kindergarten through sixth grade would greatly benefit returning back to school 4 days a week. And I would say that 7th through 12th grade would greatly benefit returning back to school 4 days a week. As a nurse, of course, I'm very
Sheila,
concerned. But I will
that's
say,
3 minutes. Thank you, and I
I'm so
apologize that
sorry.
I misheard Raymond with your name earlier. Do we have any other public comment, Raymond?
Sarah, you are unmuted. Please state your name for the record and state your public comment.
My name is Sarah Vaccaro. I sent in my public comment, but I didn't hear it read, so I was just going to ask if I could read it. So first off, I want to start by saying thank you to the school district. I think they've done extremely well in handling this pandemic and everything that it's thrown at them. Having like those laptops available, having a clear plan for the parents before school started was really amazing. And as a parent, I just wanted to say thank you for that. I have been able to see firsthand the cleaning that goes on inside the schools, as I'm also a substitute teacher. And it is like above and beyond what I would expect it to be. So I am in support of kids going back full time. I have seen how hard it can be for students to not have that cohesive learning. It's difficult for them to switch back and forth between at school and at home. I've spoken with several students who are struggling because their home situations are not conducive to learning. for various reasons. Some students live in motel type situations where they don't have reliable internet access and virtual learning is extremely difficult. Some students have chaotic home lives where getting on a computer and getting any real work done is just not a possibility. I feel that parents may feel uneasy about sending their kids back to school, but as having the privilege of being inside the school and seeing how dedicated the staff is to the students' safety, I have full confidence that they will continue staying vigilant after students return. So I would just like to urge everyone to vote yes on bringing our kids back.
Thank you, Sarah. Seeing no other public comment, President Walker?
Thank you, Raymond. Any questions from the trustees? Go ahead, Richard.
You know, we heard from the elementary point of view tonight, but what we didn't hear is somebody from the middle school. And I'm wondering if there's any unique problems that could occur with the sixth graders returning, since they are going to be changing classes and maybe interacting. I guess there's been discussions about that. And do you guys anticipate any unique problems?
Thank you, Trustee Varner. I have discussed this at length with both middle school principals, and they believe that they have plenty of room in their buildings. Probably of all the buildings that we have, the middle schools have the least number of students. And so being able to spread those students out in classrooms and also in the hallways, they are not seeing any particular reasons. The one thing that happens, obviously, as students get larger is they take up more space, and they not only in classrooms but also on buses. So the transportation piece is still something that we've got a little time to try to work out. We've got the list of students from the transportation department. We're reviewing those. In some cases, we're finding that there are students whose names are on the list who haven't really ridden the bus much, and so those are the places where we'll start to see if we can add people back. So I know in one of the public comments, there was some question that we would not allow kids to come to school because they couldn't get a ride to school. That's not what any of this is about. I just want to make sure that the person who wrote that or anybody else who might be thinking that that's an issue, we're not going to, hard select people who can and can't ride the buses. We're going to work with the families and try to make sure that students who need the service can get there. But we're also going to ask if parents who have the ability to bring their kids to school, if they can help us, if indeed we are able to move forward with this plan. Obviously, staff members who are worried about their own health to a high degree, that could certainly be another condition where having more students in a building is just going to maybe increase that worry of those individual staff members.
Go ahead, Laurel.
Just a question with transportation. When we had to close transportation for that period at the beginning of the year, was it 2-3 weeks? Were there a significant number of students who were unable to attend school without the transportation during that time that we noticed?
I can tell you that it was difficult to know who was there because of transportation and who was not there because of transportation. I maybe would defer to any of the principals who had specific involvement with that. Sure.
Sorry. Jennifer Ward for the record. Yes, we did have students that were unable to attend because there was no busing available. But at Fremont, a majority of our students qualify for busing because of our large zone, and we were able to accommodate. We actually had to move transportation for our family pickup to the church, Hope Crossing, in order to accommodate all the parents who were able to pick up and bring their children. And so, yes, it was impactful for a certain percentage of students who parents were not able to or did not feel that it was appropriate for them to bring their students. But for the large majority, our students were able to come to school.
Just to be clear, Mr. Stokes, we still will have busing services. We just won't be able to accommodate increased numbers. And is that just for the elementary buses, or is it also the middle school buses?
So for students in grades pre-K to 8, there's a 3-foot social distance expectation. For students that are in grades 9 to 12, there's a 6-foot expectation. So the larger the kids are, the more social distancing is expected. We plan to continue using our buses, but if we have sports at the high school level beginning to occur, one of the concerns, and I'm sure Trustee Wilkie has heard this many times, you can't send a team of athletes to an away game in just one school bus because of the size of the kids. You actually have to send more buses. And so what's the discussion right now is the NIAA will be asking the governor, can we get some sort of a modification to that restriction? Otherwise, think of Humboldt County, and if they have to take a bus all the way to Incline Village or something like that, then if they have to do that with 3 buses, where in the old days maybe they could do it with 1, that's a significant impact on the organization. So if they make a change at the NIAA level for high school athletics, you would certainly think that they would take into account the same kind of consideration for just running a regular school bus route for academic purposes. So I'm hoping that this is, I guess I tell you this long explanation, I'm hoping that this is one of the areas that is considered maybe ripe for removing some of those restrictions. So I'm hoping that that has some capacity for us here locally, where we can put more kids on the bus so that there's not a worry about those kids who can't get to school.
Mr. Stokes?
That's not happened yet, so I just want to make sure that you understand that.
Okay.
I could be incorrect. I thought that the 3-foot distance on buses was for all students. So, and I don't know if that was a change, but for some reason, I seem to remember that the 3-foot spacing for all students on the bus, and then it was 6 feet in the buildings, but we might want to look that up.
Okay, thank you, President Walker.
And I guess just specifically for schooling purposes, I would let Trustee Wilkie know that I have kids willing to run themselves to sporting events if they occur, or drive themselves, or get there any way they can. So hopefully we don't, hopefully busing isn't the only thing that determines sporting events. Hopefully they can come up with some kind of workaround for that. But for purposes of having students in school, do we anticipate that we will have enough spacing on the middle school buses? Or will we also need to ask parents to drive if they're able? Or is that just because when we're dealing with the elementary bus, you have, pre-K through 5, so you do have more kids? Is there enough numbers of kids to keep that spacing at the middle school, I guess is what I'm asking.
I believe that at the 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade level, we'll be able to meet those restrictions.
So basically, we still have to work out whether or not for elementary kids, if parents are able, that there may be some routes that parents may need to assist in driving their kids to school.
That's true.
And I'll just ask, I know sports is a high interest item, but let's stick to the agenda topic so Ryan doesn't come talk to me.
I'm just kind of doing a little.
You're getting us in trouble, Mrs. Crossman. Any other
President-
comments from the board? Lupe, did you have something?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I do. This is a question for Mr. Stokes. Mr. Stokes, can we clarify the rationale why we are considering bringing the 6th graders but not the 7th and 8th graders back to the classroom?
With our current enrollments, and with the size of the students, we were going up to the 6th grade as a matter of incremental movement. There's a place where we felt like starting with the 6th graders being the first-time middle schoolers, as it were, if we could get them back into the regimen of school and having them get caught up as much as they can, then the next likely move is to keep moving up the spectrum, the grade spectrum, and bring more students back as we're able.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Another question, not on transportation, but with the plan to bring 3rd through 6th grade back 4 days for in-person, is that, as we understand it, in full compliance with the current regulations and protocols that are in place in Nevada for schools?
I'm not sure I heard all of that clearly.
Sorry. Is the plan that we are presenting and voting on tonight to bring those 3rd through 6th graders back 4 days a week to in-person instruction? I know part of what we planned when we did the hybrid was to make sure we were in strict compliance with the current regulations. And so my question is, are we still, even with this plan, still in compliance with the current regulations for schools?
Yes, we are. I can tell you that at any given day, and I think it was said in one of our public comments, students at school are students at school. And there are going to be times when they are not always under constant supervision if they happen to go around the corner from the duty even. I mean, it might be very minor, but there will be times when students will sit close. I was in a high school classroom just the other day, and students were working on a group assignment, and they were seated rather close to each other. Those things happen on any given day at school. But I would say from a pure standpoint, when all things are going right, yes, we can meet those expectations.
So just to piggyback on the 6th grade question, it's my understanding, if I remember right, when my kids were in 6th grade, that there are some 6th grade teachers that they teach other subjects in 7th, that same subject in 7th and 8th. Does putting the 6th graders back to 4 days a week, does that add to their workload? Or because of that difference in grade teaching?
I think any teacher will have their set of duties, and they'll be preparing for their course, their lesson plans. They'll be teaching that according to whatever their assignment is. One of the things that I think might be helpful is that our teachers are going to be able to do most of their work face-to-face versus trying to follow up then in a remote setting as well. So I don't really see this particular process as requiring more effort from our middle school teachers who might also have a 7th or 8th grade assignment, but there may have to be some modifications as we go through this. I'm not sure I'm able to speak for each teacher.
And then I'm a little concerned about staffing, especially in the nurses. And I've asked Jose a couple questions about that, so I'd like to have him put those on the record real quick, if that's okay. Because I'm concerned about, I don't know if we're fully staffed at nurses, and I appreciated Mrs. Story's coming in and calming our fears with a lot of that. So I do appreciate her taking the time to come and talk to us tonight too. But Mr. Jose, could you just kind of tell us where we're at with staffing with subs, custodians, and then I know that looking at now, after I've heard all the public comment, I don't think the custodians are going to have much more work because they were doing that same work every day because they had kids in the thing. But maybe just tell us about the nursing situation and the subs.
Thank you, Trustee Wilkie. Jose Delphin for the record. Thank you for the question. With regard to staffing, nurses in particular, I know we were out a few nurses due to health conditions the last few weeks. Right now, only 2 nurses are out due to medical conditions. We are still down 2 nurses from the beginning of the year. And Mrs. Sear and I have been trying to figure out how to get more nurses into the fold. As you know, they're a highly sought commodity right now. In fact, I just heard from a couple of business owners who are in North Carson with their hotel situations, and they're all traveling nurses that are occupying those spaces. So that gives you a sign that Carson Tahoe is definitely taking up the nurses we need. Nevertheless, though, we have been able to find 2 contracted nurses to replace those positions. We are getting them all signed up with their contracts and getting them ready to start in January. So that's a good thing. I'm excited about that. With regard to substitute teachers, Mrs. Wilkie, you wanted a little bit of that as well?
Because when we were in there full-time last year, we didn't have enough subs, we were having 2 classrooms together. So there's a little bit of concern of how we're going to work it when we're having to deal with all these other restrictions.
Of course. With our current sub-teacher staffing, it is not great. I will tell you that I share the same concerns as all the districts all around us. We're all searching for the same pot of gold, which is not to be found. We typically, right now, have 30 regular subs. That means they're loyal to us. They come and work for us every day. We have 20 super subs. We started that new this year. They're super because we just kind of move them all around and they work every day. And they get the top rate of $150 a day. And they work 4 days a week. We've only added about 9 new subs this year, which is low. So we have been doing all kinds of new things, like asking our classified staff if they're able to. And I've worked with Carrie Finn, the president of CESA, to help me craft the language to allow some of our classified staff to be sub-teachers. And it's a slow trickle, but right now we have about 3 classified staff who are going to be able to serve in a pinch. So it's really a tight wire, if you will, as this whole pandemic has made us all on edge, is, they can only serve a certain number of days per year to minimize the impact on the regular load of their work. So in a tight emergency, when Mrs. Calario and her VP are out subbing for their respective staffs, well, Dr. Ward, I don't know where she went to, as all our administrators are doing the same thing, we can enlist some of our classified staff who have sub-licenses, and some have emergency sub-licenses that I have signed off on. I've actually signed on about 6 emergency subs already this year, and that means that they lack the 60 credits that they need to become a full-fledged substitute teacher. Their license is only valid for like 2 years versus 6 on a regular. So the sub situation isn't great, but we're doing the best we can, trying to be creative. I know that Washoe County recently alerted their former high school grads to come in and substitute teach, which legally they can per the sub requirements. We can try that as well. I do have a preference that I want our subs to be at least 21. I don't want them 18 or 19 in a high school situation or a middle school situation where they're too close in age and things happen. I'd rather not risk that for the sake of our kids' safety. So if they're really young, even 21, sometimes too young, I want them serving in elementary or middle school just to keep that age distance a lot further apart. Most of our emergency subs this year have come from spouses of our own staff who are stay-at-home moms or dads or uncles and aunts and grandmas. So they've heard the call that we've been sending all year, and they're signing up. And we're hoping that, please keep signing up out there. With regard, let me go back to custodians real quick. We're also doing the same thing with custodians where we have offered some of our other staff to help out at a part-time basis to help with the custodial crew and cleanup. And we actually have 2 bus drivers who want to do some extra work when their duties are done. Right, and along with that, I was going to get to the juicy part last. We also have, through Mr. Rodina, with the work-based learning, and Mrs. Roman at Carson High School, just hired 2 students to help with the custodial work around the district. And if they get a full-time gig by 18, they can retire before they're 50. That's the best thing. I don't know if they're thinking that way yet. I think they just want the money for now, which is good. So we're doing, I think, more this year to help cover as many of our vacancies as we can. This pandemic has a double whammy to it, where a simple cold now is not a simple cold. And people are being very cautious getting tested in our own sites, Eagle Valley or Bordewick Bray, by our own nurses, as Sheila had mentioned, and making sure that we are not releasing staff who may be COVID positive. That's really a hallmark of our district, thanks to Mrs. Sear, that we've been able to jump on the TIES and CARES bandwagon, where other districts are not relying on that free testing that we've been able to do for our adults of all staff. So we feel lucky. We don't know why other districts aren't taking advantage of this. It's to their benefit, but we're taking all their tests, and they actually get delivered to Mrs. Sears' office every week. There's bags of tests ready to go. So I hope I answered your question.
I appreciate that, and I think you should keep that substandard up. I'm glad to hear, because we have heard in Washoe County they're doing the high school thing, so I'm glad to hear that we're not lowering our standards.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Mr. Walker, can I do a little kudos for Ariel, if you don't mind, real quick?
Say that again, please.
Can I do a little kudos for Ariel for doing a good job?
Sure, Ariel's doing an excellent job.
I'm just a little proud of her. She's one of my staff, so.
Jose,
Thank you, Ariel. Yes.
Jose, this is Trustee Ramirez, and if I may just do a little sales pitch for our students that are graduating from WNC with their 2-year degree that are pursuing teaching, please keep them in mind, because those would be ideal candidates for those sub positions.
Thank you, Trustee Ramirez. As you know, I work with Mrs. Lobsinger all the time with regard to funneling subs to our school district. I actually gave her a copy of the emergency sub license with my signature already. I trust her implicitly, and she's been able to feed us a few emergency subs in the process.
That's fabulous. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Delphin.
You mentioned that some of the admin staff has subbed, for lack of a better term. Are you guys utilizing the TOSAs as subs when needed if you can't find anybody else?
Oh yeah, all hands on deck. TOSAs, custodial staff, whoever has a sub license at this point. Absolutely. Do you guys have your sub licenses? Just wondering.
We can't
No pressure
actually
there,
sub
Joe.
in this district because we're trustees.
They won't let us.
So it's a
Oh.
conflict.
Got it, okay.
I have one more if I could. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
What's the turnaround time on the COVID testing now for the teachers to get the results, or the staff to get the results?
That's a great question. It really varies on the load of tests that are being done that particular day. The quickest I've seen has been 14 hours. It's pretty good. The longest I've seen has been about 24. There is a new test that Mrs. Sear is trying to get a hold of, where it's a saliva-based test that is almost as good as a regular COVID test, but anyone can administer it who's trained, and it's, like I said, a saliva swab test, and within 15 minutes, we will know if it's positive or negative. So that's coming. So good things are happening.
A question for Richard. Thanks, Jose, though. Sorry, let me get closer. So really what it's coming down to again is, what's best for the students in terms of their education and the safety of staff and students at our schools. Sheila Story was good enough to provide comment and give us her opinion about the need to bring kids back to school. Richard, have you had any conversations, and have they been willing to offer any input from like Carson Health and Human Services or local medical folks regarding their feelings on bringing kids back to school? I mean, we're hearing from folks today, but we're not hearing from her other than Sheila, any medical professionals, and I'm wondering if we've got any input.
Well, I think out of an abundance of caution, they're concerned, just given the total number of cases that we're seeing right now. If you count backwards and look at maybe the Thanksgiving holiday, and then as you move forward and you look at the Christmas holiday, and we have 2 weeks off during that period of time from school, and then before we would implement this particular next step, there's another 2 weeks to January the 19th. So it's a little hard to project forward, but I know there's concern in not only our community, parents and staff. There's also concern just in general from those other community leaders. And, there are things that are happening. Certainly, we know that as we're looking at this sheet that's up on the board now, there's a lot of family members that are already attending our school that would like to see their kids back in greater numbers. I know that just as we've been working in the pandemic over time, there's going to be people on both sides of the coin. It's going to be a hard call. There's no doubt about that. Do I have anything where someone has given me a document that says that's really a mistake or that's really the right thing to do? No.
Joe?
And then,
If I can answer, or do you have another question? Just, I was texting my pediatrician because when you have 5 boys, you tend to get the text number of your pediatrician as well. And I just asked her, even in the current surge, what are your thoughts on this? And she was emphatic with a yes to bring them back 4 days a week. She said, we are not seeing schools to be, and she's a local in our community pediatrician. She said that from what she's seen, the schools continue to not be hot spots. The homes are the hot spots, but it's not the schools. So people need to take precautions at home, maybe not do the gatherings as much like that. But what she is seeing is mental health that's overwhelming. She's seeing 2 to 3 mental health visits a day for the upper grade kids. The kids that are back in school 4 days a week are doing much better. And the other thing she said is they're just not seeing the severity of COVID in students, and they have not, from what they've seen, seen this children spreading it to teachers or staff. And so with that, she also said the vaccine is out now. There's a lot of hope, and that will begin to really help with everything like that. So that, I know it's probably, it is hearsay. But it's information that I was going to share with you that she related to me and looked for that. So that answers.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. I've heard similar from a couple of doctors that I spoke to. I guess my next question, and maybe it's more for Ryan, with spikes occurring and this kind of thing, if we decide we're going to bring these kids back, does it open us up to any liability?
I think Mr. Stokes gave you guys the best guidance he could in that no matter what you do, somebody's going to be unhappy with the decision you make. The immunity that was provided by the legislature in one of the special sessions, which carved out the school district, as I told you at that time, does not create a cause of action. And so in my opinion, as long as you are doing your best to adhere to the protocols, you have a good and solid defense to any lawsuit that could be brought, which goes back to something Trustee Crossman said earlier about whether or not this is in compliance with the protocols. And I will tell you that the governor's directives gave great discretion to the individual school districts, and you can see that by the different things that the districts have done. So I think with all the protocol that is in place, which is, in my opinion, very much in compliance with the directives, if there was any attempted claim on the school district, you would have the best defense of doing everything in your power to comply with the directives and do what's in the best interest of the kids.
Trustee Walker, if you don't mind, I just wanted to add that the nurses did get their appointments to get vaccinated today. So they'll be inoculated very shortly. And I would speculate that educators will also get their inoculation announcements soon as well.
Thank you. Any other questions? And I'll remind the board that this is a matter for possible action.
I just have a few more questions that I didn't get to ask. One of them is, there seems to be an overwhelming thread in some of those public comments that there's secrecy that we're doing, that we're not being transparent. So I would hope that we're going to look at something somehow of easing these thoughts if we do go to 4 days. And I don't know if it's a tracker, even though we know those aren't the most reliable things. There's a lot of school districts that are doing them, but it just seems like there's a lot of fear and they feel like we've worked so hard as a district to be transparent. To hear that Washow's being more transparent than us makes me really nervous that we're losing that feeling of transparency and trust with our employees. So I would hope that if we do go this direction, that we'll work on that. And I'm not sure how, and maybe we can reach out to some of those people that feel that secrecy. And I don't know if the administrators are portraying that transparency. You guys could probably answer that better, but and if you are, it's not trickling down. So I'd really like to see us work on that by January when they come back, if we go to 4 days, because that's my biggest thing. And then do we have, as a district, a threshold that we'll be using, say, because we know the governor's coming back January 15th, and at that time, if we're still spiking the way we are, he'll probably shut us all down anyway, but is there something that you're looking at that by January 15th, if the numbers go to a certain point, that we're gonna backtrack and not go through with the 4-day plan?
Trustee Wilkie, what we have done so far this year is we have handled each situation as it's come up. It was mentioned our transportation department. We couldn't function. We didn't have enough drivers. We closed it down. We waited until those people were ready and able to go back to work, and that's when we opened it back up. Mrs. Clario's school had a situation where we had some key personnel that were also out. We couldn't function, so we closed the school for a certain period of time. We've done similar things with classrooms, individual classrooms. When we don't do that, we go to individual staff members or students when we know that they may have been in close contact with someone who has COVID. So in those conditions where we've either been contacted or we get a tip from the health department that a certain family is suspect, then we quarantine those individuals. So we've been acting in that fashion on our own whenever any of those conditions come up. And we'll continue to act in that particular fashion. But if we start down the road of having more students in our schools similar to what Washoe County's done, similar to what Douglas County's done. We would likely not change. We wouldn't stop doing that. We would continue going forward, but we would handle those individual cases like I've just described.
And then I'd just like to say before somebody makes a motion, I really appreciate the administrators and the staff of looking at this. I mean, I don't think there's any of us that don't want the kids back into school. And we just want to make sure that everybody's safe and everybody's health is considered. And I think that we've worked really hard to do those protocols and to train everyone. So like everybody else, none of us have taken this decision very lightly. We put a lot of work into this. I appreciate all the work that staff and parents and the Board of Trustees has done. And I am thankful that we could have a special meeting so that it became on our shoulders to make this decision, and that staff and Mr. Stokes, it wasn't in your hands either. I think it was really important that we had this meeting, and I'm glad that everybody took the time to do it. And I just wanted to I know it's a holiday season and it's busy, but I really think that this decision needed to be made at this level, and I'm glad that we're able to make that one way or the other. But I do appreciate everybody's time putting in to do this.
May I add a comment? This is Trustee Ramirez. I also want to thank Mr. Stokes for making this meeting bilingual to make sure that all our students and parents from the district are informed of these actions or these discussions. So thank you, Mr. Stokes, and of course, thanks to Leticia Servin for providing the translation. We appreciate your time.
Go ahead, Joe.
Richard, maybe it's a question for whoever wants to answer it, you or the principals. In terms of the cleaning, the school cleaning and the disinfecting and all that, are we comfortable that our schools are being cleaned, they're disinfected to the level that to the best they can be, I guess is what I'm asking. And I know I don't want everybody to come up individual necessarily, but anybody doing this, or are we all thinking it's pretty good?
Trustee Cassiopo, the biggest complaint I've heard about our buildings is that the floors are not vacuumed as maybe staff are accustomed to that. And at the very start of the school year, we talked about trying to give up some of the things in deference to something else. So with some of the hopes that we were expecting out of having some of our student workers is to have those young people do some of the straightforward custodial work that might free up our custodians to do some other thing, or even to run a vacuum cleaner. So even though that part has been something that I've heard regularly, the part about paying attention to the flat surfaces, to the touch points, to sanitizing a room with these foggers if someone has been ill or if they've been known to be ill, we do that almost immediately. And so some of the work we view as more impactful maybe than others. And that's where, and I would certainly invite any of the principals that are in the room to talk about the cleaning and the sanitizing. I think we mentioned at an earlier board meeting that we received a fairly large grant from the Pennington Foundation, and they have these large machines that you can go in and they actually do one of these rooms very quickly with this fogging technique. Unfortunately, we've not received those yet, and so while that has the promise of being able to do more with less time, we still haven't been able to receive those as of yet. So we know that there are still techniques and materials, equipment out there that we're hoping to get that we don't have, but I believe from a cleaning and sanitation perspective, I think we're doing a good job in our buildings.
And I appreciate that. And I can tell you that some of the teachers who originally expressed concerns about some of the practices have since said things have improved. And so that's, that was comforting to hear. Are we, just from my own ignorance, as we go into the winter months and it gets cold, are we able to exchange air still the way we intend to?
It's my understanding that that's still occurring, yes. It might be a little chilly, and we've cautioned our staff, you might want to have a light jacket close by, because they do that exchange first thing in the morning, so that air is going to be relatively cold. They try to do it right around noontime when the kids are moving in and out of the building, and then they do it again in the evening. So to my knowledge, that process is still engaged.
I just want to leave you with one last picture in your head of elementary students as one of our very high energy kindergartners ran from his class to his ESL classroom ahead of his classmates. He ran in, ran around, went to sit, jumped up, sanitized, and sat down. So we've got it.
So do we have any further discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion, and just one comment, because I told him I would say it. My senior said, "You're looking at this backwards. You should have started at the top and brought the seniors back 4 days a week first." I feel for our older kids too, because I know it's a hard year for them. I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees approve the opening of Carson City School District elementary schools to 3rd through 5th grade students and the middle schools for 6th grade students to attend in person 4 days per week, Tuesday through Friday, effective January 19th, 2021.
Second it.
We have a motion from Laurel, a second from Richard. Any further discussion from the trustees? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Next item on the agenda, I believe, is adjournment. So item number 5, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you being here and your plan to keep our schools open and safe.
Good.